Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I figured we would just have a discussion about the top 5 cards that I feel like are the most toxic in the format right now. I just figured it would be fun to talk about all of this, and I really want to know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. So starting with the first one that I actually wasn't that sure if I even want to put it on the list, but then I ultimately decided to do it, is going to be Havnis. Honestly, why I was a bit iffy on that at first is because when Havnis is activated, it doesn't always hit the mills. That's pretty much what it is. But I think it is one of the most toxic cards. Basically, what Havnis does is it's able to get your opponent plays during your turn, which practically just shouldn't be allowed, I think. It's like, why do they get to establish a board while you are trying to play? So Havnis is going to be able to get the opponent to the fusion summon more than likely, and it also might hit Ishizu cards. And spoiler, we are going to get to the Ishizu cards soon because Havnis spirals into them, they spiral into more fusion summons, and basically when Havnis gets to Kitkallos, which essentially is like the first step you are going to go through probably if you're trying to play, if it's like the opening hands, you're triggering Havnis, it hits a name, you're probably going for Kitkallos, and at that point you know that you're going to be starting your turn with at least 6 cards in your hand, even though you activated Havnis, because you're still going to be getting a resource from Kitkallos. And you also, if you hit any of the spell or trap cards that are the tier spell and trap cards, you're also going to be able to get more resources that way. So Havnis essentially, not only that it gets you resources, it also gets you bodies on the board and establishes a board for you without you even, having to do that much. You just activate Havnis, you hit the mills, and that's pretty much it. And the boards that you're able to establish will usually have Kaleido Heart or Rulkallos or even Dragostapelia if you want to go for it. So it's going to be at least one disruption that helps you disrupt the opponent and also start your turn with it on top of the 5 to 6 cards or even more that you have in your opening hand. So I wanted to include it on this list because it's basically that one card that's out of it, everything else just spirals into, boards, resources, millers, shufflers. Just basically it gets the tier player going, and it also gives them a bunch of plays because you are going to have to activate something during your turn. Like, it's pretty much inevitable. And also because of that, it's quite hard to negate. Like, you can Ash it, of course, but Ash is non-searchable. And when they activate it at that point in time, you probably don't have anything on the board yet to negate the Havnis because you just started, because they are going to use it as soon as possible. So yeah, I think Havnis is like that gateway, to everything else that's toxic. And since we mentioned Kitkallos, it's actually the next card on the list. So Kitkallos is kind of absurd, actually. Basically, when you get to Kitkallos, you're not only getting to your resources, you're getting to a body, and that body gets you to more fusion summons. And then we have the second part of Kitkallos' effect, and we're going to get to that a bit later. But looking at the first part, it's able to search you pretty much any piece of your engine you may want. So you can have some kind of follow-up, you can have additional pieces of disruption, you can have pretty much whatever you please in that situation. And also, if you want to send it to the graveyard, like I said, you're able to fusion summon more. So with that, that's how you're able to bridge from Kitkallos to pretty much every single of the other fusions if you want. You can go Kitkallos, send Rhinoheart, you can use the effect, bring it back, use the effect again, or use the effect of the tier card that you pitched to fusion summon, get the Kaleido Heart. And then looking at the second part of the effect, is just able to mill 5 cards and give you a tier body that you may want in that situation. So if it summons Merly can mill 3 additional cards. Rhinoheart obviously can send the card and make a fusion summon happen. It can also put a Shayden on the field or a Rhinoheart just for the levels, or Merly for the level of going into a sprint and continuing with your plays. So Kitkallos, like we established, not only gets you cards, either fusion summons or gets you cards, but also mills 5 just for free and gives you a body on the field that you may want to use for your additional plays and just to further play out your turn. And also, like I said, is the material on Rulkallos. So pretty much without Kitkallos, there's no Rulkallos, and with Kitkallos, there is going to be a Rulkallos every single time. So that's something to think about as well. Like, in my opinion, Kit is an issue. Like, it's just the way it is. And I want to hear your thoughts. And moving on to something else that is a huge issue in my mind. And Like, I genuinely don't like these cards because of the deck that I'm playing. So I wanted to mention Ishizu cards. Like, taking a step back and just looking at the tier deck by itself, I personally think it's an insanely cool deck. Like the play style, everything that it does, you know, all of the skill intensive gameplay that can happen if you play tier limits, all of that. I think it's cool. I think it's nice. I'm a fan of it. But on the other hand, I still am one of those players that don't play tier limits IRL currently. So I struggle against these Shizu cards. And there is a lot to talk about when it comes to that. So to start things off, maybe with the shufflers first, if you look at Kirdo, and I'll try to be quick because you probably all know what it does at this point in time, but I just wanted to make it clear how insane Kirdo really is. If you just look at Kirdo pairing it up together with either Killback or Agito, any way around can work. But if you go Kirdo pitch Cowback, for example, let's say you pitch Cowback, you get Agito, you're able to trigger Cowback, mill 5 cards, trigger Agito, put it on the field next to Kirdo that's already on the field because of course, it's a free special summon of a level 4, not to mention it's a level 4. Then you also get the Cowback back. So you just got 3 cards on the field, essentially for free, and you still have 3 to 4 cards to play with if we're assuming that's your opening hand. And with the 5 cards that you milled, you probably started fusion summoning already, so you see, you can see where this is going. Like, being able to take your opponent's resources while putting a body on the board is like, it's insane, honestly. And pairing all of these Shizu cards together is not hard at all because all of them are unlimited. So even if you don't run 3 Agito, which some builds don't, you still run all of the other ones at 3, so you're gonna see them all the time and just be able to get that free body on the board. Like I mentioned, it's a level 4, and we all know that rank 4 Xyz monsters are insanely strong in the game, and Tier has been playing them from before, so right now it's only just more ways of going into those cards. And yeah, we talked about milling the top 5 cards. So not only are you getting to your cards and getting to your fusion summons by milling your own deck, you're taking away cards from your opponent. And then actually that makes the deck building weirder because some people actually, they are forced to change their decks because sometimes a pseudo brick might get milled, and in case it does and you don't have your combo, like, you don't want this to happen. So you need to change your build, which makes your build worse in a way, just to combat the Ishizu cards. And if we're not going that far, if we're not talking exactly about changing the build, it's also overall really hard to have your resources in the graveyard without any way of just getting them back, because not every single card is recyclable. Like, if you have those types of cards in your deck, that's great. And if you're able to utilize Ishizu cards or plus from being milled, like force milled, if you're playing a deck like that, then that's great. You don't really care about that. But there's a bunch of decks out there that do struggle against that. And I think milling 5 is way too much, because if both millers go off on both 2 turns, you're getting 20 cards milled, which is like, it's half your deck. You know, it's completely unfair, I think. And yeah, that's it when it comes to the millers. Like, the opponent is getting the fusion summon, you're losing stuff. And if we take a look back at the combination that I mentioned, and if we switch it around and you go Kirdo Pichagiro, search Cowback, and you're able to trigger the Cowback, you're basically forcing your opponent to activate cards, or you're trying to force your way through the opponent's board if you're going second. And also, Cowback acts as a hand trap. Like, it doesn't need to be that you're forcing your opponent to do something. If they use an effect that sends a card from their deck or hand to the graveyard and you're able to go Cowback, that's actually really nice. For example, against Draco Slayer, that's a thing, because Majesty makes it so the card gets sent from the hand to the graveyard, and then you can bounce something like a tuner, Beyond the Pendulum, whatever. And Cowback does come up, even though it's a bit more niche as just a hand trap. I think all in all, the entire card is insanely strong. And looking at Mutora, like, people aren't exactly playing the Gravekeeper's trap, but access to it is still nice, and Mutora is so good because it is one of the shufflers. So we talked about the millers, now we're going to talk about the shufflers. Being able to just go, okay, quick effect, I'm going to banish itself, and I'm going to just shuffle 3 cards, either to give myself cards back, because why not? You know, I need resources, I want cards back in the extra deck, in the main deck, to maybe have targets for a kit search or whatever. Not only am I doing that, I'm also going to take away your cards because I can do it. So, like, I didn't think I'm gonna get that passionate while talking about all of that. But I do genuinely feel strong about these cards. Like, it is annoying when they do that. It is unfair when they do that. So essentially, it's just a way of stopping your opponent's plays and preventing them from activating something in the graveyard. Like, if we quickly take a look at Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres, basically when that effect was like everywhere, when Dragon was that popular, you all know, like, the card is really nice. You're able to bounce something and then you special summon something from the deck. But right now with the Shufflers, and there's also the Bestios, but right now we're talking about Shufflers, obviously, because it tributes itself for cost, then it's never going to go off in the next chain with its second effect. Like, immediately you can see that new cards being introduced into the game just completely annihilate some of the older ones that were insanely strong at some point in time. So you can do those kinds of plays also, preventing stuff from triggering on the next chain. And then there's another interaction together with Perle Rhino, because of course it's functioning together with Perle Rhino. Like, if you banish it, shuffle back a tier, you're able to actually activate the Perle Rhino and pop either a card of your own to get more pluses off of it, like Itkalas, for example, or a tier to fusion summon, or you can pop the opponent's card. So having a Shuffler in the graveyard is actually insanely strong because you're able to just destroy an opponent's card for free, really, and they're insane in the mirror match, obviously. So mirror matches can get intense and weird at times, but they do play a huge part in them. So there are a lot of insane things when it comes to the Ishizu cards, and in my opinion, they are kind of toxic. So moving on to the last two cards, we're not only going to be ranting about Tearlaments, because at this point, this video is just a rant about the Tearlament deck, which I like. Overall, I like the deck, but the cards are still toxic. But that's besides the point. Let's just move on to the next card, because we're going to talk about a card that actually counters Tear, and it's going to be D-Shifter. So I think this one is going to be like the most controversial on this list, simply because some people that play it obviously are going to defend it like until the end, and they are going to say it's okay and it's healthy almost in a way because it's able to counter the top strategy, which is toxic by itself. But is it really okay when you're countering a toxic strategy with a toxic card? In my opinion, it's really not. So Shifter obviously makes everything get banished. And also some people might say, well, it has a downside. If you have no cards in your graveyard, you can activate it. But if you do, it's dead. But in my opinion, that's not exactly a downside if you can actually play it in a deck that doesn't care about the graveyard and can actually empty the graveyard for you to be able to activate another Shifter if you happen to draw multiples. So that's not an argument, I think. That's not an excuse. The card is still insanely busted because it's almost like a necessary evil to counter the evil that's Tearlament. But if you're going up against a strategy that utilizes the graveyard and it's not exactly at the power level of Tear, you're just completely auto-winning by utilizing a card like D-Shifter because they're not going to be able to play. And I think when it comes to cards that prevent playing, overall, it's just too much. It's unfair, it's unhealthy, and it just shouldn't be happening. So Shifter, in my opinion, is one of the most toxic cards, even though it's very important to counter the top strategy. But I still don't think that makes the card any more, I guess, justifiably played, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'm making sense. It's also very hard to negate because if they play it during your turn, you're going to have something like Called By, which is a 1 anyway, or Gamma. But if they play during their turn, you can only have Gamma. There's literally nothing to negate the Shifter. So if it gets dropped, you're just done. And it is non-engine, it is unsearchable, so there's that. But there is very little that you can do under Shifter, and Tear tries, they make Baguska and stuff sometimes, but it's like, it may not be enough, and at that point you are probably losing because Shifter is insanely oppressive and it's insanely strong, and in my opinion, it's a bit too toxic. So there's that. And for the last card, I wanted to mention Wind Barrier Statue. Now this one has been, there was a lot of talk about it in the community simply because it also is one of those unfair cards that's preventing play, and those kinds of cards are always hated on. Like Tear gets hated on as well, but at least in Tear you're doing something, even if it's a weird mirror match, or even if you know, they are just completely overwhelming you because the deck is very, very, very strong. They are not preventing you from playing. They are just putting up a bunch of things. And this might sound biased, but like, in my opinion, it's still worse when something is completely stopping you from playing. Like when you're going up against Wind Barrier Statue, you can try to beat over it, but I guarantee you that the Flunder deck is going to either prevent you from beating over it or just be like, oh, okay, sure. You're wasting your battle phase anyway, and now I have additional things, because of course they do, on top of the Wind Barrier Statue to stop your further plays from happening. And at that point, I'm probably putting another Wind Barrier Statue on the board because of course I am. So, there's that, you know. If a card is outable by battle, for example, that still doesn't make it less toxic because they're going to put another one on the board anyway. Bounce your cards, spin back your cards, and just get rid of your resources, take away your plays, make you unable to play. And that's uninteractive, it's not fun, and it's kind of horrible. So I think Wind Barrier Statue is stupidly busted, even though it's just a 1k body. But there are so many things to back it up in the Flunder deck. And not to mention Flunder plays Shifter as well. So there's Shifter and Barrier Statue in the same deck. There's too much. So even if you out the statue, it just might not be enough. And another issue that is going to arise, I think, moving forward, no pun intended, is with Kashtira, because it's going to utilize Wind Barrier Statue as well. So there's that. Arsenal Falcon can bring it out. So I think I have a feeling they might ban Barrier Statue simply because more than one strategy would be able to abuse it, and that's never a good thing. So there's that. Those are the top 5 toxic cards in my opinion, even though the entire Ishizu package is more than one card. But I just feel kind of passionately about it because they're milling my Draco Slayer resources. And I don't like that. So yeah, those will be the top 5 cards. I'm sure there's many more that you have issues with because, you know, it's just the way the game is. But I would love to know your thoughts in the comments, and also your thoughts on those 5 particular cards that are mentioned in this video. And of course, if you like this video, if you like those types of discussions, please let me know in the comments. And of course, like it, sub to the channel, check out all the social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.